is really concurrent. He just likes the word conjugate, and he's going to stick to it. And that's what, in the West. So we'll talk about Westside because I do like a lot of it. Basically, so Westside is based on 3 principles: your max effort, so MEDERE, and you can go 90% above 1 to 3 sets of 1 to 3 reps. So Louis Simmons feels like 90%. You have to train 90% almost all year round. Charlie Francis, who is the coach of Ben Johnson, a huge track coach, he had high-low, which was also undulating for track, because he said you don't win races unless you train above 90%. And that's right, because you don't win a race, you don't win a 100-meter dash training at 75%. So he would do a high-low. And so the max effort has a 90%, has your dynamic effort at 40 to 70%, 6 sets of 10, and these are not set in stone, but for the most part, 1 to 3 reps. And rep effort, where you basically do bodybuilding. And everyone's heard of basically Westside, I'm sure. It floats around, right? And so Westside method, and I'm talking about it because there's a lot of good about it. And so the Westside method has max effort on upper body and 1 lower body lift each week. They will bench, they will squat, they don't deadlift that much. And the Westside is a method. To say that I know anything about Westside, I don't train I think it's in Ohio, so I don't really know exactly what they do unless I train there, so I'm not going to claim to have true knowledge, but this is everything that I've learned, and he's put out videos and information. But at one time, the only thing they ever did with deadlift was 70% of their deadlift max effort was a good morning, like they say concentric only good morning from suspended chains, or eccentric, concentric, seated good mornings, chains, bands, all that. They never really did a deadlift. Then they started to do the deadlift only on dynamic effort. And so it's always performed with the variation of the true lift. So instead of doing a bench press, they're going to do a chain bench, reverse band bench. And that's where a lot of chain work came from at bands, from Louis Simmons. But why do they use it? Because they wear assistive gear, right? So if I put on a shirt, and I don't know if you ever seen anybody put on a shirt, you cannot touch your chest unless you have several hundred pounds on the bar. And there's videos of people where they'll try to get down into their deadlift, and they're wearing their deadlift suit, and they can't get down into it. And finally, when they get into it, they can rip it off the ground. Or a squat, you cannot squat unless you have several hundred pounds. So where did chains and bands come from? Because it changes the strength curve. Because now, all I need to be is strong here when I do a bench, because the bar is going to spring off my chest in a suit. Where do I need to be strong from? Here. So that's where boards, chains, bands, reverse bands all came into the prominence with people training with. Right? So, but there's a lot of good part to it. It's just, if all you ever do is a board bench, like I said, or if all you ever do is a high box squat, and you never do you truly squat at a powerlifting meet, you don't have a box behind you. Even though I do use a box in my own training for other reasons, you still have to do the true lift. But this is what Westside does, and it'll rotate their special exercise every 2 to 3 weeks, because that's what he says, it prevents your CNS stress. And like I said, it usually involves a movement of one's weakness, but the weakness is a lot with the gear. So speed work, so dynamic effort, and that's when you'll take the true lift, but you'll usually use accommodated resistance, like a chain or a band. And then this is really good, and this is where there's a lot of applicability to training, because when you do a powerlifting meet, right, you only care about 1 rep. So one time you're going to squat, you walk under the bar, you take air, you set your back, intra-abdominal pressure, you do your walkout, you do your squat. So 8 sets of 2 there is going to get replication, technical mastery over just 1 rep, as opposed to doing a set of 2 sets of 8, where it doesn't matter what the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, the 8th rep, it doesn't matter what you do there, even though some would say that if you have to work your technique more on 7th and 8th, and there's some truth to that, but so dynamic effort is pretty good in training. And then finally, with your rep work. So let's say you say, well, I don't want to have a big chest, I just want to bench more. Well, let's say you build your pectorals and your back muscles. Well, now all of a sudden, the bar has to travel less distance. So some rep work may be beneficial for you, right? And so any other questions or anything, Westside? So basically, max effort means strength. Dynamic effort means speed, power, rate of force development, all those already. So don't get caught up in the terms. Repetition effort is hypertrophy, bodybuilding, rep work. So sometimes I'll use these terms, but again, they're all those are just the terms that he used. So what are examples of dynamic effort? Anything move fast. If you move it fast, it's dynamic effort. Weightlifting, I use weightlifting with track and field for quote unquote dynamic effort. Plyometrics, whether it's upper body, lower body, medicine balls, accommodated resistance. And So like medicine balls, I don't know, I think I've seen some at Citadel. Why are they good? And why are chains good? Why are bands good? Well, whether you know or not, let's say I have a bar in my hand and I'm bench pressing. As I get to here, whether I know or not, you have your Golgi tendon, right, your GTO, and that's usually when you're falling asleep in class, or like hopefully I'll catch you awake long enough and that head snaps up, that GTO kind of kicks in. It's an inhibitory mechanism. So when I'm locking that bench press out and I don't want to hyperextend my elbow, whether I know it or not, as I'm starting to go up, I'm going to slow that bar path. I'm going to slow down just a little bit, right? Because I don't want to hyperextend. So a medicine ball is good because I release the weight. So if I'm going to work on power production and I'm going to work punching or pushing, or I'm going to do a plyometric and I'm extending all the way through, because you're getting acceleration all the way through the movement, and I'm not decelerating at any point, I'm jumping all the way through. That's why box jumps and some plyos are good for squatting, or even your deadlift, especially if you're in a position where you're in a deadlift and all you're doing is standing up as fast as you can. Do a seated box jump where you're sitting here and you're just under contraction, but you're not loose, but you're tight and jumping straight up. A lot of these things are beneficial to your powerlifting movements, and that's where chains and bands are beneficial, because when you put that chain on, the band on, as I'm starting to lock it out, what happens? The weight, right, so I'm squatting, weight gets lighter. As I come up, the weight gets heavier, so it teaches me to accelerate to the end range of motion. So all these things are beneficial for dynamic effort.
I got a question. So how would one lace in programming for plyometric movements like medicine ball throws or box jumps or something like that? How would you quantify like progressive overloading you do?
The first thing, it usually needs to be at the beginning. Anything with the higher technical proficiency has to be towards the front. So like a bicep curl, because there's no axial load, it's a very simple movement. You can fail on those, that's at the end, right? So a lot of these movements are more towards the front. If you were to categorize your movements to 1, 2, and 3, a strength movement, a speed movement, it either needs to be 1 or 2. So there's your first thing. Now, let's say you're doing a plyometric, all right? It's usually because it's body weight, and there's no progressive load if you don't add weight, but you can, a vest or dumbbells in your hand. So let's say you're just gonna do a box jump, all right? And so I've seen them over at Citadel Nutrition. You have a box this height, this height. There's your one way for progressive overload, because you have different box heights. The other is your reps and sets. All right, I'm only gonna do 2 sets of 2 box jumps at a low height. All right, now I'm gonna do 4 sets of 2 next week, or 5 sets of 3. There's your progressive overload. Or I'm gonna go ahead and move to the next box. All right, now I'm gonna do, that got too easy. Let's say I wanna do a dumbbell squat jump. I grab a dumbbell in each hand, and I'm gonna jump, and let's say I use 20 pounds one week, 25, 30. You don't want to go too much heavy, because especially with the dumbbells, they can start clamping against your legs, but you would end up just trying to jump higher. Let's say week 1, I have 20 pounds in each hand. I'm gonna do 3 sets of 3, jump, stick, stand, then repeat. All right, so that's one way to do it. Then you can do it with a reactive, with more of a stretch shortening cycle, where I'm gonna jump, absorb, and then jump again. So now I have this more elastic component, so there's your progression there. All right? So just basically your reps, your sets. If you have a weighted vest, you can change it that way. If you're doing a broad jump, all right, you're jumping straight up, and you're here, and I only do 1 or 2 jumps. Next week I do 3 jumps. Then you can start adding it with a coupling or a contrast training. Let's say you're squatting that day, and you add them with your box jumps. So you've gotten really good at your squat, so you're technically proficient there. You've gotten really good at your box jumps, so now you're not having to learn 2. So I wouldn't do this at first. So I'm good here and I'm good here. So now I'm gonna do a set at 80, 85% of squat. So the strength range, I'm gonna walk over. It's not a race, it's not CrossFit. Walk over, right? Then I'm gonna get a set of 3 box jumps. I'm gonna take my time and I'm gonna come back over, right? So now I've got something that's a strength base and a power base. Yeah, so you can, but don't do that until you have technical proficiency in both of them. Because then you're gonna have to, this is the problem, and I'm not bashing CrossFit, but because I do strongman, it's really stupid. But, so if you don't know one of the 2 components, learning one under a state of duress is not good for you, because you're gonna have failure somewhere. And either it's momentary muscular fatigue or a technical failure that could result in injury. And that's where doing multiple snatches over and over, if you're not good at snatches, why you do 20? You gotta learn 1 before you can learn 10, right? So plyos, another plyo is power push-up. So when you do a power push-up, you just push up so hard, your hands come up off the ground, right? So you're gonna do a push-up, your hands come up into there. That's usually easier than a clap push-up, because when you have to clap, you have to catch. So you do maybe just 1 rep. Next time you're doing 2 reps. So the progressive overload can be through your reps and your sets. Yeah, then when you wear a vest. Yeah. Or you can put I don't know if you have a band, you all seen, you take your band, you loop it and it's crisscrossed in your back, and now you can do with a band on it as well. Yeah. So there are different ways. Medicine balls, just different weights. And really a lot of these, It's just the intent to move things fast.
So for just explosive and dynamic effort work, wouldn't it be easier to use variation of the Olympic lift, like the hang clean and the
That's
snatch,
another way to do it, absolutely.
instead of keeping the weight vest, or do you recommend both?
The problem with doing a weightlift is this. Your powerlifter, you have 3 movements.
Yeah.
You have to be really good technically at those, right?
Yeah.
And so you're gonna spend your predominant amount of time training those 3.
Yeah.
If you don't know how to weightlift, right, when we say weightlifting, we're saying clean and jerk, snatch, and those derivatives, right? So jump shrugs, high pulls, clean pulls, hang snatch, full snatch, whatever, right? So if you're working and you're a beginner, or you're still working on those 3, and then you start to add in these, you might have conflicting motor patterns, and you might not get better at both because you're chasing a bunch of cats in the room.
He's asking as an experienced weightlifter.
As an experience, then yes, then you absolutely can. You can. So what I do is I can't clean anymore. I can't get my elbows up. Right? Either my neck gets in the way or my ribs. I just hold it. I used to be really good, but what do? I snatch and I push jerk a lot. So I use the snatch and push jerk right before I'll squat or bench or do that, because I know how to do both of them. So you can, absolutely. Because what is a weightlifting movement? Weightlifting has rate of force development. It's good because it has triple extension. So it has what you're looking for. So you can absolutely do that. It's just the problem is if you're not proficient at them, trying to do them and having to learn both. Because right, the difference between a deadlift and a clean pull is really big. So if I'm deadlifting, excuse me, I'm a little bit over the bar, right, and I'm through here, but if I'm clean pull, you're sitting back. Depending on who taught you weightlifting, they may teach you to clear your knees out, to do the double knee bend to drop your hips through. That's not the same as a deadlift. So if you're doing it 2 different ways, you might confuse yourself from what you're trying to do, which is more important if you're trying to just power lift.
Right.
But you can, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I'm asking is more like from an athletic standpoint, because I don't just power lift, I do a little bit of grappling too, so
Yeah.
that's what I was wondering.
Well, then either put it on the same day or have different days. So have your powerlifting day, maybe a weightlifting day, or just choose one weightlifting movement and one powerlifting movement. But you can, absolutely, yeah. Did that answer your question though?
Yes.
Yes. If you had a tool bag, and so I used to do construction with my dad when I was a kid. I was really good at tearing stuff down. I was terrible at building it, but he got me on it. But he used to he used to buy me lunch, right? Like he used to take me up to McDonald's. And then at the point he got to pay me because I was eating more than it was going to be paying me. So that's when I really found out the value of money. So basically, we would go to the job site, and on the job site, he would have his toolbox, and he would have his tool bag. And I thought it was cool. I had a tool bag and everything, right? A little cloth one. And so you put your hammer in, your speed square, your chalk box, your pencil, and all this stuff, your nails. So those are your tools that you're going to use every freaking day. Then you got your other tools. You're going to put those you're going to leave those in the tool box in your truck, right? Those are tools that you got, but you're not going to use every day, right? Your plumb line or something like that. So that's those. If you know how to weight lift and it's that toolbox, go to it, use it, right? But also don't try to serve too many masters. If you're getting really good at one at the cost of another, and the other is really what you're trying to compete in, then you need to reassess your goals and your programming. Yeah. And the other thing about dynamic effort, does it really work? So if you're you're working up to 85% today, you're not going to squat the first few really slow. Like you should be you standing up quick. That bar is almost bouncing off your back, and that's when you know you're really feeling good. You're doing that clean. You're ripping the head off a line, or your deadlift. You're in that position. That bar is just like, you're almost falling back. That's a good day. You're like, man, I'm out to crush it today. But if you know it's barely moving, and you're already shaking, you're like, oh no, where's my tier 1? And so does speed work? Yeah, it works. But at the same time, like a lot of you lifters, like you can already tell, you're a feast or famine. You're either like, this is 70% grind. This is 90% grind, and this is 70, boom, this is 90, boom, this is 92%, oh, can't get on my chest, I'm done, right? You're feast or famine. You may be all out or none at all. And then I'm talking very end of the spectrum. But a lot of people are grinders. Like there's people I'll spot that say, don't touch it, it'll look like I'm not gonna get it. And they're just sitting there, like, and he's just moving it. And other people, like, people spot me and I'm doing 4 reps, I'll do 3, and they'll look smooth, fast, and then I'll do 4 and I just won't get it. They'll just come up and I'll stop and say, grab it, get it off me. And that's how, so does it actually work? Look, we all have parents, right? So our parents have given us a genetic makeup, your genotype, right? And so that genetic makeup has a lot to do with how fast you're gonna be. So if you're, I know this is not gonna be the exact way to say it, so if your fast level, your speed level is 100, train to 100, but to say that you're gonna make 100, 110 is probably not gonna happen. What you gotta do is make whatever, you gotta train everything you have to be as successful as possible and bring it up to as much as you can make it, so when you get out there, you can perform. So does speed work? Yes, but you should be lifting fast anyways. When you squat, when you bench, you should be lifting fast. So plyometrics medicine balls are a way to teach you to lift fast when you do the true lift. Right? An example is a dynamic effort in the back, because you have your force velocity curve. And a good example is this. I'm going to do a shot put. When I do a shot put, I have, let's say, a wiffle ball, softball, and a bowling ball, right? And so I'm going to shot put all three of those. And so this is, so as you move through your force velocity, so this is max strength, this is your 1 RM, and this is your grinder. And here is your wiffle ball, there's your bowling ball. Right here is kind of really good, because this is where we use the word power. That's it has the strength, it has the weight, and it has the speed. This is where a good part of training needs to come from, right? Because sometimes if it's too light, you're not going to get a whole lot off of it, but you should be having, so your intent to move things fast, it needs to be the same all the way through here. Even if your bar speed is slow, when you're doing a 1 RM, you should have the intent to move things as fast as possible. Put speed to the bar when you lift at all times, and that's where a lot of your speed work will come in. But your speed work, you can just do it on your warm-up sets. Your 60% needs to be fast, your 70% fast, your 80, and then you get to your 90%, you train your system to be fast. All right, so max effort burnout, and this is kind of goes back to a little bit of the Westside. So training above 90% for extended time can burn you out. Just like I said, be careful of it. That's why you work more in the middle. You rotate your exercises, and that's where my question is, do you lose motor patterns? This kind of went back to the Westside. I should have moved this slide, but all right, so here's what I do personally, and this is what I do with athletes. This is how I set up training. As I go through what I call linear wave, and again, it's just a term. So it goes through 3-week progressions, and this is how I like doing things. And if anybody's ever looked at the 5-3-1, I think Jim Windler, this is what he does a lot. And this is, to me, one of the better ways to do it, because when we look back at that linear program, we started at 60 at week 1, and it took us 9 weeks to get 90%, and then when we started back over, it took us 9 weeks to get back to the other again. It was too far in the ends. So that's good, like I said, for beginners. But this, if you got a little bit of training, or even if you are a beginner, this is pretty good. So week 1 is light. So on an RPE, right, when I talk to my athletes, on an RPE, this is a 2 or 3. So this is what Joe Ken, who does the tier system, which is another system to look into, this is what he called base, load, performance. So there's all a bunch of these terms that these strength coaches come up with. But your week 1 is light, your week 2 is medium. So this is where you're learning the movement, where you're trying to get your feet under it. You're just getting this is a acclimation phase. This is where you're starting to push it, and this is where it's heavy. And then you repeat, or you deload. And I don't really think you need to deload. I think if it's light enough, you just start back over. And this is all just on a continuum. Like I said, heavy does not mean you're maxing out. It just means that this is 60, this is 70, this is 80, that's 70, that's 80, that's 90, whatever. But it doesn't mean you're maxing. And remember, revert back to the general adaptation syndrome. We build, we recover. We build, and then we recover, right? And then, to me, this is one of the better ways to train if you're going to set up your own personal program. And what I do with track in my own personal training is I have 5 main movements. I really want to get stronger in the bench, the squat, the deadlift, and either the overhead press or the push jerk. Those are my 4 main movements. So what I'll do, if I have those 4 movements, I'll set it for 4 days, and then, or if I have a track athlete, I set up their main movements. So it's squat, it's deadlift, or it's clean, and then it's front squat, and then I'll just put in different assistance work. The coach that I used to work for, one of my mentors, Scott Jones, he said, if you're tired of looking at it, they're tired of doing it. So if you're tired of a movement, you're tired of doing RDL as an assistance lift. Do it on another day, do different reps, do an RDL with a chain, do RDL with a pause, or do RDL off of a concentric only, so you're off a box. So long as you don't lose your neutral spine, do just an RDL concentric only, or do an RDL just from the knees, or bring it to the knees, have a pause, and have a hip extension. So to change your assistance work around, but again, if you're a power lift, your assistance work has to assist in your 3 main movements, right? But to me, that's an excellent way to train when you set up a program. So what would you do? So let's say week 1 is 70, week 2 is 75, week 3 is 80, and these are just general numbers. Then what do? You start back over, but maybe not as low, 75, 80, 85. Then again, you start back over, 70, 80, 90. So now in 9 weeks, you've already had a 1, 2, 3, 4 above 80%, right? As opposed to a true linear program where it took you only were in 80, 85, 2 weeks, and then it took you 9 weeks almost just to get to 90. So now you have this ability to have heavier cycles and lighter cycles. So you push forward and you pull back, right? And so then another way to train, which is also a wave in a way, is undulating. And this is where, all right, so day 1, I'm gonna do 5 sets of 10. I'm gonna do, all right, so here's one. All right, day 1, I'm gonna do 4 sets of 10. And this is, okay, so scratch this if you want to. This is like a general prep. All right, so the day 1 of really your training, you're gonna do 60%. If maybe you want rep work because you need size, or maybe you want speed work because you're not looking for size, you just want to do technical lifts and work more of your speed. So you're gonna, day 1, you're at 60, day 2 is at 80, and your third day is at 75. So you have all 3 different intensities in a week. And then, so it starts over again here, so you move on all the way through. So in a week's time, and this is good, I know a lot of bodybuilders may do this, but it allows you to stay fresh with your CNS. And this may be